It's wrong to fire workers for stealing.
And the record begins with a song of rebellion. I wouldn't sell my belts to industry, so they carted me off.
Quick note, if you approach this video from the point of view of right and wrong and legal and illegal are the same thing, you're going to have a really hard time understanding these concepts and just dealing with the whole train of thought. Relatedly, if you're watching this video and you have a bit of a hard time, you might have to do a little bit of reflection in yourself to see where those thoughts come from and if maybe you need to do more work internally divorcing those concepts. And I strongly encourage you to evaluate that relationship. So in America, the majority of employment is done at will. We have at-will employment. And what this pretty much boils down to is that employers can fire employees at any time for any reason they want. The long of this is they can't do it for any reasons, like if they just don't like you. But the short of it reason is they have enough reasons where they're allowed to fire people that they can just lie or be very, very subjective or harsh and have plenty of legal reasons to fire you. And most of the time, the job that do this, the employee that is fired does not have the resources in order to challenge this in any kind of court. Or the job is even worth that much to be terribly angry about being fired. This video at its core will be why at-will employment is bad. But the steel man of at-will is sometimes people steal and you need to fire them for it. Of course, there can be other arguments that aren't stealing, and I'm just gonna brush through those real quick. Like, sometimes people are racist and need to be fired, and sometimes people are sexist and need to be fired. Sometimes people smell really bad and no one in the office likes them and they need to be fired. And I'm gonna say that racist, sexist, smelly people need a place to work too. They also need jobs. They need them. Everyone needs a job. If you want to make a system where everyone doesn't need a job, and then the racist, sexist people don't have to be at work, cool. Do it. Because I am super down for a system where not everyone needs a job or needs to be doing a job at an employer. Do that. But right now, if you want to live, you need a lot of cash, and the only way to get cash is to work. So a job is pretty much anything that does a task. There are tasks, there are things to do, so there are jobs to do them. You have tasks and jobs at home. People need to clean, people need to cook. Someone needs to fix up the house, someone needs to make sure the pipes don't burst, someone needs to install new pipes, someone needs to rake, someone needs to make things look good, someone needs to make something livable. There's a job for that. The thing is, the tasks at home, the unemployed, unmonetized work, is something that is undervalued in society. Yes, because those jobs are associated with women's work or homework or things you need to just do, but also because they don't make money for people, they are undervalued. If it doesn't generate value in our economy or generate value for someone else, for an employer, then it's something that we overall devalue. For example, when scheduling for an employer, I was asked if I was going to college or had another job. And I'm like, no, but I don't want to work on this day. And they're like, I might make you work on that day. But I'm like, what if I had a job on that day? Then I wouldn't schedule you. But since I didn't have another job, none of my time was considered my own, even if I didn't want to trade it away. Because it's not time that's generating money for some capitalists. If it's the only time I can take out my car or I have to watch my kids, the job doesn't care. I have a set time where I hang out with my friends every week. But that amount of time is always up for question because whenever they want, their jobs can call them in for it. So why do people steal? Well, talking statistically, the majority of crimes are motivated or have roots in economic reasons. Financial. A more significant portion of economic crimes have economic causes as well. Go figure. I'm knocking out of the park today with thoughts here. Just now getting to the fucking point. So why do people steal? Economic crimes have economic causes. People steal because they need money. Something has failed economically on their part where they feel like, or they can make up with that by stealing value. People may also steal because they're entitled to something or they feel entitled to something. If they're scammed on something, they're made a promise or something, or they've put in an extra effort that makes them feel as though they deserve what a particular thing, they may resort to stealing to get that thing because they feel entitled. And then a smaller section of this would be mental illness. This would be kleptomania, this would be, it was too easy not to steal and I'm very impulsive. This is by far the least likely thing to happen, but more likely to happen for small little knickknacks, like the things that are sitting by registers that want you to add up to their bill. They're tiny cheap things, and they're all overpriced, and the point of them is to add more to your total at the end of the store. But also, they're so small and easy to steal that it's hard for some people to not just steal them. So a couple things you need to keep in mind whenever you talk about workers or the economy is that we have a vast supply of unemployed people, and those unemployed people make it so that jobs are more valuable even though they're shitty. And it so happens that the more someone works somewhere, the more money they're supposed to get. So it's really in an employer's interest to fire people real soon so they don't have to pay people very much money. So if you're constantly having a job that you barely have to pay someone for, they still need money. It's just more expensive to be poor. It's more expensive to rent a house than buy one. It's more expensive to buy 7 crappy pairs of shoes than 1 fantastic pair of shoes that last for years. It's a lot less money to put gas in the tank of your car than to pay $10 a day for public transportation, which public transportation should also be free, but going on. So there are plenty of economic reasons why someone might feel like they have to resort to stealing, or someone might literally have to resort to stealing in order to pay bills, in order to be equipped with shoes or clothes, in order to afford any of the multiple expensive things that we roll out to people every day. Or they even might not have time or resources to make sure that they have money available for them. I've had lots of friends and known lots of people that need to go to the bank for cash because they can't just have a convenience card on them. There's some people that they forget their wallets and cannot just go around, and that was their plan for food, and they do not have food to feed themselves, so they resort to stealing whatever's there. And framing on framing on framing, in this country it is considered very shameful to be poor and a hazard to ask for things, a hassle and an annoyance to ask for things. So if you need food, the people around you might not give it to you, and they might resent you for asking for it. I bring up this because the biggest example to me that sticks out in my head is in most retail stores, you can get fired for stealing anything, even once. The rule of thumb is, if they're stealing at one time, they probably stole a bunch of times that we didn't catch them for, so fire them. So if you catch someone eating a Snickers and they say they'd pay for it later or not, they're fired on the spot. At will, fired. And from a certain framing, this is fine. This is perfect. This is upholding the system as it goes. This is according to the law. This is according to who owns things. This is according to who has the rights in the situation. This person is stealing, and that is wrong, and they must be punished. But in another framing, that person works for you. You are supposed to pay them money. And with that money is what they're supposed to live off for their entire life. And it should supply for their entire life. And if it can't supply a candy bar, it's probably a shitty job, and that is your fault as an employer. That is the employer's fault. I'm sorry I constantly go into the second person because I'm talking to an assumed audience. Forgive me. So I see the majority of theft and workplace theft that is caught and punished as a fault of the employer for having a subpar job. You either pay someone enough where they don't want to or need to steal, or you make it hard enough to steal that they can't, or you make the punishment so harsh and the accountability so ubiquitous that any stealing instantly gets punished. As a person who I'm not allowed to talk about on the internet likes to phrase it, so they work at the place, but they don't get paid enough to shop there. So that's not the only part of the argument. The other part of the argument is that the store would be nothing without the workers and employees. You can't move product without truck drivers and people manning the warehouse. You can't stock a shelf without a stocker. You can't run things without clerks and people running the cash register. There is no value to anything in our economy if there aren't people and workers to make it. And yet, those workers distinctly do not have a say in what happens in the store when their hours are, or who gets fired or what the store even sells or does. Another example would be products are next to worthless. So when you go to the shoe store, you can look for a $45 shoe, and they have several sizes of that shoe. A size 6 shoe and a size 16 shoe are the same price, but there's a lot more materials that went into making the size 16 shoe. Why is this? Similarly, when you buy office supplies, I know office supplies the best, I'm sorry. You can't buy 10 paper clips. You can't buy 100 staples. You can buy a package of 50 paper clips for like $1.50. You can buy a package of 500 paper clips for $3. I'll say $2. Yeah, $3. And then you can buy a package of 1,000 paper clips for $4. Why can't you sell 10 paper clips for 4 cents? Because it's just not packaged that way. Because the product is next to meaningless. And the demand for only a few paper clips, only a few staples, is next to meaningless compared to what supply is. Our supply has obliterated any need for demand. You can't get 3 or 4 insert sheet protectors. You can get 50, or you can get 100, or you can get 200, and it's all for not that much money. I mean, it's an annoying amount of money for $10 to $20, but it's not gonna break anyone. But also, you just want 3. You want cents worth of product. And in order to get a product close to what it's made for a few pennies each, you have to spend $10 or $20. This is because of profits and prices just kind of being set at a level, but it's mostly because after shipping things and manufacturing things and get it sent out to you, the material to make that product is a negligible amount. You can just ignore the raw materials that it takes to make something compared to everything else that we package with it. Because the point of our economy is not to make sure people get the things they need in order to do jobs and work and tasks. The point of our economy is to make the money. So everything is terribly inefficient and doesn't make sense. And having worked in retail, customers don't like it when you tell them that about any of those products. You just have to go like, oh shucks, I don't know. I have no idea. I can't think about society that much, man. I'm not allowed to. And apparently you can't either because you get mad at me. So people are being overcharged because they are poor for things that mean nothing to a company. And I'd argue that this is partially because firing people is more important than making sure inventory is one way or another. Firing people is the point of our economy. It's the point of our bottom-feeding service industries. It's the point of having essential workers. It's people that we can fire all the time. You exist to be fired. You don't exist to have a family. You don't exist in order to help the economy or to help push for the American dream. You exist to be fired because that makes someone else's margins higher. The big hit in the last couple of months has been White Fragility, written by a woman who goes to people's employers and does seminars on how not to be racist in order to get people fired for being racist so that the company doesn't have to pay them anymore. And this best-selling book has people going, oh yes, I need to try not to be racist. But really what it's doing is their solution to racism is just feeling bad about racism and firing people for employers. Fire inconvenient people. Because as soon as a person's fired, they can be replaced with anyone else. Everyone in every step of the line is replaceable. Another story, another fantastic products mean nothing to company story is one time a district manager came to our store and and they grabbed a box of candy from the shelf and started eating it and didn't say anything for a minute. The very uncomfortable manager is just like following around, and the guy's like, my manager's like, what about the candy? He's like, store use it. Store use it. Pay for my snack. The district manager can nonchalantly have the store pay for his snack. And that doesn't happen for every single employee. For most employees, they get fired. They get fired for that. They just get fired. Hey, I'm hungry. Store use it. It's a store. This would fire someone else. And they just do it. It doesn't matter. You exist to be fired. There are a bunch of assholes They're just assholes. Workers give businesses all of their value. Workers make businesses work for these products that are meaningless to the company that make them and can nonchalantly write off if it breaks. Or often, as an example with grocery store, half of the food goes bad and they stock enough food so they can throw half of it out and is purposefully wasted. And yet, if an employee steals food, they're fired. If employees steal from the trash, they're fired. They lock the bins so that good-meaning people can't grab the food and give it to people who need it, or needy people can't just go in the dumpster for food that they need. So you could just throw it away to ensure that you get not you, but they throw it away to ensure that they get profits. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So that's the majority of the reasoning. But just to run through some technical things that is not the point of the video, but people probably will say about firing. The majority of actual theft that happens on the behalf of the employer, and it's called time theft, and it's still millions of each day. Hank Green has a great video on it, who is an employer and entrepreneur and author. That's the majority of workplace theft that happens. The employer stealing from the employees that they also only exist to fire, and also makes their business possible, and also they can't spare $1 to give them a candy bar once in a while, or even 500. But bigger than that, you may also use your little thing to point out that, like, people steal more. There are people that have stole $10,000 or $500, and well, let's go this ever increasing. $10, I don't care. $50, it's getting a little, like a $50 thing you can kind of go to court for. Like, that's kind of bad. Like, that's like you stole boots. You stole boots to use on your feet. Oh wait, people need those. I don't care. I don't care. Fuck off. What if an employee steals $500? They do some kind of return scam, or they do some money changing trickery with cash cards so the money disappears over a long enough time, and they're able to skim however they want. $500. That's not enough to pay rent. Your employee stole not enough to pay rent. Like, you can go buy food for a good while, you can pay for a good chunk of thing, but $500 is not a lot of money in the scheme of things, and people need a lot more than $500 to live. Not a lot. Now, the biggest thefts that happen to stores are on the executive side. And actually, this doesn't just happen in businesses, but it happens in small groups. Any group that needs to use and have a fund for money and have like a treasury secretary has a risk of being embezzled through. I know there's been a couple of really famous things about women who have stolen $10,000 or $100,000 worth from like their local soccer club or maybe even a charity, and then like spent it on stuff. And that's not great. I don't love it. They probably should be disciplined, but also they probably need some other kind of help for stealing that much money. Like, we're getting into like yearly wages for a person. Like, they stole a year's worth of employment. You know, really good employment. I'll give it. Like, I don't know. I think I might know a couple people who are getting close to $100,000, but I definitely know couples that make that much money. But I would like to point out, but that is not that possible for employees. You are dragging in the wrong person, which is why I'm putting in this thing, because people will, if they're looking for arguments. There are people that have stolen tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but those are usually an executive kind of branch thing. Embezzlement is a real and general terrible thing, but most of the embezzlement that happens is perfectly legal or really hard to track, or they don't get fired for when they do it. For example, the guy who ran WeWork, a giant scam thing, pretty much a giant scam real estate scheme that pretended to be a tech company. The CEO of WeWork copyrighted the word work, like personally copywritten it, and then sold himself the rights to the word work for a couple $1,000s or $1 million. That's the line. Like, the board of directors told him to stop. Like, this is clear embezzlement. You copywrote a word and then sold it to your own company so that you're just trying to siphon money from the company to yourself. Too much. Like, you can still do that. They still let him do that. That's definitely the point of every executive's job, to siphon money from the company to themselves. But like, that was too much. That's fun. I'm gonna link to a good thing with the WeWork too. Chop the Trap House talked about that. I'm gonna talk about those 2 links. Fun side thing to mention. When I talk about why people work, I refer to needing to live and buy food instead of just get money. Because we do use money to live and buy food. And we do need money for that. But money is the thing that we made up. And maybe we don't need money to determine who gets office supplies and who gets to live in a place and who has to be homeless. And maybe that'll be better. I throw it out there. Why people work to live, and maybe because they like working, maybe they don't need the stress of fucking money. But also, I need money. So if you have extra money, give me some money. You know, especially since my main history has been retail. This video existing might not help me be able to employees might not like. I can probably talk them down. But they probably won't like this video if they do any kind of search on my social media. So if you have extra money, give me some money. If you don't have extra money, that's cool. That's fine. You don't have to steal boots in order to support me. You can just leave a comment. Like, don't bother arguing with people that are trying to argue in the comments. Just leave something positive or talk about someone who hypothetically you do not know and is definitely not you might have stolen something because they needed it. But you didn't do it. Someone else.